Hello out there and welcome to the Revere Veterans and Community Show. Today we have two special guests, really special. We have Ms. Linda Shaw who is the Executive Director of the Revere Housing Authority. Did I get that right?
That's correct.
And of course you people know Judge Anzuoni.
Yes, yes. Thank you, Morris.
Judge Anzuoni?
Anzuoni, correct, yes.
Thank you, and he's Chairman of the Board of the Revere Housing Authority. Linda, before we start, tell us what the Revere Housing Authority exactly is.
Well, we provide safe, affordable accommodations for low to moderate income people who can't afford to have rent without any kind of supplement from the government. So we have two primary programs. One is public housing, whereby the Revere Housing Authority owns the property that we rent to people and we subsidize that. And the other is Section 8 program, where people can go to private landlords and try to find a place to stay, and we'll subsidize that. So we have two programs running simultaneously. We house about 900 families, right now, throughout the city of Revere, and we have a little over 700 vouchers that we use to help pay for rent. We also provide some supplemental services, not a lot. We provide resident services for the elderly, and we provide resident services for those experiencing some sort of like alcohol or drug abuse, domestic violence, that sort of thing.
So anybody needs help, they can contact you?
Anybody needs help, they can contact me. If we can't help them, we can refer them, say, to CAPIC or CRW, that kind of agency.
Right. Can you put your telephone number on there and let them know if they want to call you?
Well, my telephone number is area code 781-284-4394.
Right. Now, George,
yes.
First of all, let me welcome you again. And before I start with you, I understand you were also a veteran of the Vietnam War, Linda, so let me thank you for your service.
Thank you.
6.5 years in the Navy. Thank you, Linda,
correct.
and God bless you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
George, you are chairman of the board on the Revere Housing Authority.
That's correct.
Tell us what the job consists of and what you got. I see you got a nice bunch of papers here.
I do.
Let's have it.
What the job for the Board of Commissioners is one of setting policy for the Revere Housing Authority. It's not to run the daily operations. The daily operations are run by the administration, headed by the Executive Director, Linda Shaw. The board is there to set policy and make certain that the authority is running in a fashion that is providing good, clean, safe housing for our residences, which we're all concerned about, and also that we are able to set policies so that every resident is protected and gets make sure that legal rights are also protected. So their safety is protected and their legal rights are protected. So that's the type of policies that we set. And we set policies for the administration, personnel policies, so that the administration runs well. Okay?
Very good. Now I got to ask you a couple of questions, and each one of you can take an answer. Is there a minimum income that people, for example, to get into the housing authority, that in other words, is there like a minimum income that they have to have?
There is a minimum income, but that is dependent on family size and what income they bring in. So it's different for each family that walks through the door.
Oh, okay.
Right. And that's right. And then there are rent calculations that when first they find if they're able to come to a minimum, and then there are rent calculations that are prescribed by law, the formulas prescribed by law that and regulations by DHCD, or if it's federal by HUD, that actually will calculate the amount of rent that each household pays.
Oh, okay. Then I got a question for you on this. People that own their own property and they sell their houses, can they still get into housing?
It depends on what happens with the proceeds from the sale. If the proceeds from the sale puts $80,000 in their bank account, they're not going to be eligible. If the proceeds from the sale goes to pay bills, to where they meet the eligibility requirements, then that's a different story, and there's a possibility that they can rent from us.
Right, and if people want to get into the housing, they contact you on the phone number you gave them?
They contact the phone number, but they won't necessarily get me. The person that they should ask for is our tenant selector, and her name is Dora, or they can ask for Evelyn at the same number, 781-284-4394.
Right.
Okay.
You also take care of job placement, I understand? Veterans? Can you tell us a little about that?
Well, that goes into the whole scenario about veterans' preference versus veterans' priority, and I'll let George handle that. But we have gone to the state to ask for a little over $400,000.
Right, I see that.
In order to hire some veterans, because we are one of the larger employers in the city of Revere, and we work with a maintenance shop that provides skilled training in electrical, carpentry, plumbing, that sort of thing, and that would be suited, ideally suited for someone coming back from a war, we think. But I'll let George talk about the preferences.
Go ahead, George,
Well,
all yours.
the reason being is because the Board of Commissioners, some 3 years ago, Morris, what they did was they passed a resolution that we would give veteran preferences for housing. At the time that we did it, our concern was veterans who are coming back from the military service with their families or singly these men and women would not have a place to live if they're lower income. So we did pass it, and then up came, because we have, in our housing authority, we have different projects. Projects mean not projects like the housing authority, but projects such as 667, which are state-identified projects. Well, the particular one we're talking about is a Chapter 200 project. And the Chapter 200 project was built specifically for veterans and their families. And it was built after the Second World War, and a number of families and veterans and their families, rather, lived in the housing authority after the Second World War, and then moved on and went into home ownership. Now, with that in mind, this is why the Board of Commissioners actually voted this resolution, but it does hit a clog. There is a CMR in the state, or a regulation in the state, and it was which was originally gave veterans preference, especially for Chapter 200. This CMR 760 Section 5 specifically addresses veterans projects. Now, preferences. Now, looking at that, we said it came to our attention that, well, we can't give veterans preferences because there are other priorities that have been put in place above the veterans preferences. So if they're applying, yes, go
Judge,
ahead.
excuse me.
Yes, Morris.
In other words, you're saying, like, I'm a veteran,
Right.
and if I want to apply to your housing, but let's say Linda applied before me, she would have preference over.
She's also a veteran.
But if she wasn't a veteran?
But if somebody's not a veteran, they have to fit in a certain category. There's categories that actually priorities that go before that the housing authority has to take into account before they go to the veterans preferences. Now, the veterans preference reads that the veteran, there's lists, so everybody that applies is on a list. When you finally come time there's a unit available, or units available, you go by the list, strictly by the list. However, there are people who receive preferences or who now receive priorities. The veterans preference originally was meant to give veterans preference, especially in the Chapter 200, and the reason Chapter 200 is actually considered, if you notice, veterans projects. So looking at that, what happens is that the veteran who comes from the city and town would get first preference of getting into the Housing Authority into that unit in the Chapter 200 if it was no other veteran that applied. So the veterans would go to the top of the list at that point. However, over the years, as we're all aware, there's people who are serving in the military forces had gone down probably in the
Is
60s
there
and
any
70s.
Right,
So
George.
no, there's no age
No age
determination.
limit?
No age determination on that. Correct, Linda? There's no age determination on that, except if they're elderly.
Right now for Revere only, our family list is closed because it's so long. So we're only
Oh, it's
taking
family?
Right.
So we're only taking people 60 and above.
So looking at that, what happens is that there were priorities put in place, and there's I believe there's 6 or 7 priorities that place the veteran placed above the veteran, so there's no longer that veteran preference.
Okay.
Now
And that's
yeah.
like homeless,
Right.
domestic violence, that sort of thing.
So,
Right.
excuse me, Linda, so like, let's say, you say 60 and above. So if a veteran, like, let's say, comes out of the Army wounded and he's 35 or 40, he cannot get into the housing?
Not right now.
Okay.
And we have to go to the state and request that our family list be reopened in order to take someone under 60.
Right. Can the people who are in the housing, can they have, for example, pets?
Yes. But they have to pay a pet fee, and there are guidelines. They can't have a pet. They can only have one pet.
You mean either a dog or a cat? They can't have like both of them?
They can only have one.
Okay.
And it has to be under 40 pounds. Although people violate that, and we have to chase them down.
Okay.
But
I never make it, Linda.
that's the rule.
Okay. I got 22 cats sometimes that I take care of.
Oh, wow.
I mean, they're outside, but I mean, so I would never make it into the housing. Some
Right.
of the cats I think are older than me.
You're not a hoarder, are you?
No. George, I got to
Yes.
ask you a
ahead.
question, if I may.
But can I continue on the veterans' preferences?
Yeah, please do.
That's
I'm
one of
sorry.
the reasons I think that.
Go ahead. I'm
we
sorry.
need to get this across. So what we've done is we've written to a number of elected officials, including the President of the United States, but it's really not in his hands, to see if they could do anything to relieve this. But it's a CMR, and it was done by an executive order of past governors that actually placed these priorities. And as Linda said, some are, if they're, for some reason, they fire, earthquake, natural disasters, any type of some slum clearance or urban renewal that occurred and they're being misplaced, and in that line, abuse and the person was abused and so on and so forth. But looking at it, these buildings were originally built for veterans, and we'd like to keep it that way. So what we're asking is that we're asking the state to get involved. And I have to say, there are 2 people who actually, naturally, Mayor Dan Rizzo is behind this 100%, and then there's Ira Novoselsky. Ira Novoselsky has been very helpful. Ira Novoselsky has actually taken this to, and he's very helpful in Veterans Affairs because
Definitely.
he's part of a member of the Governor's Board of Veterans Affairs, Commission on Veterans Affairs, and he brought this up to Coleman Nee some month ago, who was the Undersecretary for Veterans Affairs, and who was going to bring it online. Now, he brought it up to them, and they're looking at it, and they're for it, and they seem to be pro what we're looking for. Now, don't forget, every other housing authority in the state is looking to do the same. So when we go to these meetings of the housing authorities, everybody has the same idea, that's saying, okay, we still want to give veterans the benefit of the preference and over the priorities. So that's in process now. We're at the stage of where we're getting a meeting between the Veteran Services and Department of Housing and Community Development, so that the regulations can be looked at, and maybe there's some impetus here so that the regulation be changed to give the veterans priority, because we don't want to only give veterans that are from our community priority, because that's what the veteran has to be from the community in order to get the preference. we want to actually it to go out to any veteran and their family who want to come into the Revere Housing Authority, so that
So in
it's
other
fair and
words,
equitable.
so in other words, Mr. Anzuoni, you don't have to be a Revere resident. Like if I live in Everett and they're all
You can
filled up,
apply.
I could apply too?
You could apply. However, as Ms. Shaw has stated, that the list right now, the family list, is closed. But at the same time, as we would have to go to the state to open it up and give permission to open it up and have it have these veterans be able to be placed in housing. So it's a major concern of the boards. It's a major concern of the administration at the Housing Authority, and what we're looking at is trying to get together with the proper state agencies, so that the the executive order can be changed. The CMR will read differently. We don't know if there's how much support there is out there, both in at the executive level and the state, but we will be pushing it, and we're going to continue to push it, so that the veterans get a fair shake as far as getting housing when they come back especially when they come back from war and fighting for this country.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. The question I was going to ask you was,
Yes.
before we went on to the air, I heard you talking. You come from New Orleans,
I do.
and your mouth was watering when you mentioned jambalaya.
Right.
By the way, I do DJ. There's a song called Jambalaya.
I see.
Can you
Okay.
tell me or explain to me, because I had no idea what you were talking about? What is jambalaya?
Jambalaya is a Creole dish from New Orleans.
Yep.
And it can be made different ways, but the way I do it is with seafood, various kinds of seafood, andouille sausage, which is a spicy kind of hot sausage, chicken, rice, and all sorts of seasonings, green pepper, onions, garlic, and it's just the right blend. I don't know if you watched the show Everybody Loves Raymond, but the mother always says she cooks with love instead of a recipe.
Right.
That's how I fix jambalaya, with love instead of a recipe. But we had a good time eating.
Yes, we did.
eating
Oh, you
jambalaya.
tasted it too, George?
I've tasted it, and it's
What do you
great.
think about
I
it?
think it's great. It was a...
Okay, Linda, the next time you do the cooking, save one for me, a little portion of it, okay?
I would ask people,
right.
people should ask for a recipe, really. They really
She
should.
just gave it.
Okay.
She just gave it. By the way, I understand you also lived in Philadelphia?
I did. I've lived, I got used to traveling when I was in the Navy every 3 to 4 years when I would re-up, is what we call it. When I would sign up for another tour, I would ask to be moved to a different station. So I've traveled quite a bit. This is actually my 7th housing authority that
Wow.
I've been a part of, and I've been all over. My son used to tell me, I don't know where to tell people I'm from because I move so much. I believe, if I'm accurate, he spent each one of his high school years living in a different state. And
You know,
so,
And George, have you always lived in Revere, or you from?
I've always lived in Revere. I am a Revere resident.
So you're an
my,
implant.
I'm an implant. My daughters that are living down on the beach, they're actually the 5th generation of Anzuonis that live in the city. So we've been here a while. And we plan to stay. We plan to stay.
That's fantastic, because I'm a neighbor of hers when she lived in Philadelphia. I come from New York, the Big Apple.
Oh, okay.
And a little piece called Brooklyn. And we used to talk funny. As a matter of fact, I still have a New York accent, because we used to say like coffee, 30 first. We had the correct English. When I came up here, they converted me.
Yeah, that's it.
when I joined the Navy, I was the only one in boot camp from the South, and I had a very heavy Southern drawl.
Did you really?
And I worked very hard to get rid of it. So now I find when I move into a new place, I just sort of adapt. I can't say Peabody, though. I have to say Peabody.
Peabody?
Right.
Peabody?
Gloucester and Worcester. That's what we keep correcting her on.
Here's a question I'd like to ask you both
Right.
about housing. What would you like to see that's not being done now that could be done? If you have any of your good own ideas.
Well, we do. what the board has been working on, along with the executive director, we would like to start begin a nonprofit. So with the nonprofit, we've project-based a number of our Section 8 certificates, and we've also been trained. I've been trained on low-income tax credits and the administration of them, and been certified in that. So that what occurs is that what would occur is that we'd be taking the money from the nonprofit in order to increase low-income housing and mixed income housing in the city of Revere. What I would like to see, and the board would like to see, is additional elderly housing, receiving funds from the state or federal government, so we can increase the amount of elderly housing. As you know, the need of housing, elderly housing in the city is grown. The need itself has grown exponentially. However, the units have pretty much stayed stagnant. Somehow, if the federal government or the state would allow funds for a construction, and purchase of land and the construction of elderly units, I think that's one of our major needs right now, especially with the aging population we have in the city. People are living longer, so when they become eligible to live in these housing authorities, and God bless them, that they live long and healthy lives, and we like to see that in our housing authority. However, what causes is the person that's now aging, becoming of age on the other end, has to wait a longer period of time in order to.
What is the normal waiting period, if I may ask you, average?
Linda, would you have that?
5 to 7 years.
5, 7 years.
So if an elderly person applies, they may never even get there.
This is true.
That's true. That's true, and that's part of the problem. So, looking at that, I feel that's where our major need is, because we have Section 8 certificates, and again, that's something else that I believe the federal government has stopped the use of issuing Section 8 certificates.
They've cut hours by 73%.
Right.
The administrative cost to administer the program. We're still managing to provide Section 8 services, even though we've been cut. But if we're cut any further, then that'll change.
Right. It doesn't become economically sound, rather, to administer because we have to cover our costs to administer the Section 8. Right. But we could use the Section 8 more for family than we use it more for family. So that's where our Section 8 housing would actually be if at a list where there's a guaranteed rent to the landlord, an outside landlord, and it wouldn't be a unit in the housing authority. It'd be outside in a private ownership. So that's another concern. If maybe the federal government would consider the thought, I don't think they are, that to expand the Section 8 program. However, in doing so, they also have to they can't reduce the administrative fees that the housing authority receives, because we have to cover our costs. If not, it becomes a diseconomy of scale. So the more we get, the less money we'll be making. So the more of a loss we'll actually retain. So that's not something that we're looking at.
Linda, can you explain something to me? Who owns the housing authority? The city, the state?
The housing authority is a quasi-governmental entity. So that means it's not exactly state, it's not exactly city, it's not exactly federal government. If I had to pick one, I would say the federal government. Oh. In most states, we are one of 2 states where the state itself funds housing. Every place else in the United States, it's only federal monies that come in. So the property is owned. If you think of us in terms of being like a LLC, that seems to help people understand how we are. And it's managed solely by the Board of Commissioners that are appointed by the mayor and the governor. So they're in charge of how the property is run. The funding agencies, which are the state and the federal government, have a say about whether the property is sold or purchased. Oh. But we work in tandem with each other. But it's not owned per se by any one of them.
Okay, here's a question for you. I don't know if it's possible. Can people, if they wanted to, donate, and I'm talking donate to the housing authority, like new, not used, new blankets, new clothing if people need them? Because
Yes, they can do that. If they did that, we would prefer that they donate in the original wrappings, because we have problems from time to time with bed bugs. So we wouldn't accept anything that's not coming in the original wrapping.
okay, no used.
No use, but I do want to make one thing clear, and I
Please.
don't think let me insinuate this. We are not overridden with bed bugs. We've had one or two incidents with bed bugs. We've found the solution to taking care of the bed bug problem.
How do you
and-
tell us a solution in case someone doesn't see
Well,
us?
heat, I understand, is the way to
Heat
do it.
is.
We've gone to seminars where heat is actually, they just store a large amount of heat and a number of treatments with heat,
Right.
and that.
Oh, you
actually
mean if you
gets rid-
raise the temperature in your house, that'll get rid of them too?
Well, they come in with equipment to do it.
There's
Oh,
specialized
yeah.
equipment.
Oh, okay.
And what I intended to convey is that we don't take things that may be used, because we don't want to bring in
Right.
any bed bugs.
So everything that could be donated has to be new in its original wrapping.
In the original
Yes.
wrapper, that's correct.
Right.
And we'll be certain to distribute that to our.
And there's plenty of need.
Yeah, there is plenty of need in the housing authority.
That's-
And, you know, we're very happy with the way the housing authority, thanks to the efforts of the administration and the maintenance, we give them kudos from the board and our appreciation because of the fact that we are a high performer and we're listed as a high performer. Some years ago, we had that removed, a number of 6, 7 years ago, and we worked. In fact, we won an award from the National Authority of Housing and Redevelopment officials for getting off the trouble list within an 8-month period, where normally it takes 2 to 3 years to get off of the trouble list.
So the housing authority, the people that live there, are not exactly like the ones that live, let's say, at the Prospect House or the Splatter.
No, they're not. No, they're not. No,
Okay.
they're not. And the other thing too is, and to go into who owns the housing authority, the housing authority is a quasi-agency of the state and the federal government. However, I believe 16% of our units are federal,
Yes.
and the remaining amount are state. But we are still a entity in and of ourselves that is run solely by the, overseen by the board of
Here's a
commissioners.
question I'd like to ask both of you, if I may. If I own a house and Section 8 is living there, let's say the rent is $1,000 and Section 8, they pay $300, you pay the difference, let's say $700, is that the way it works?
It depends on the family size and the income, but that's the principle behind it.
Okay,
yes.
and if the owner sells the house and a new owner comes in, can he automatically raise the rent at the
No, he has to reapply and qualify as a Section 8 landlord.
Oh, okay, so some of the people did
There's
it.
all regulations all the way along the way.
I could see that.
And the other thing people have to understand is, I think everybody should understand, is that we have lists. And the federal government and the state agencies that oversee that list, we have to follow that list. There's no jumping the list. Unless you have a preference or a priority, if there's something in the law that allows you to be
So you-
selected before somebody else on that list, then you're just staying on that list.
So
There's
I hate
nothing
to
can be
use the
done.
word, George, excuse me.
Right.
There's no gouging, if I may say so.
There's no pressure that can be put on the housing authority in order to make somebody actually give preferential treatment on the list, because we follow those lists, and the federal government HUD and the state DHCD are all over those lists to make certain. We have to report to them the selection process, and they review that, and if in the event that there is any deviance from the list, then there'll be a problem. So we run the housing authority according to Hoyle and according to exactly what the laws and regulations require us to do. In doing so, again, we've become a high performer. I think, I personally think, going to other housing authorities, I think the housing authority that I've seen and the executive directors I've met and the statewide meetings that I attend and the executive director attend, I feel that they're doing tremendous jobs in this. They're all doing a tremendous job in this state as far as the way they're running the housing authority. And I feel that having an independent housing authority and one that's local is very important to the residences and very important to the community, because then the needs of the community and the needs of the residents is local, and one that should stay. So because as you know, the governor is proposing to consolidate housing authorities, and in doing so, I think a lot of the personality of housing authorities is going to be lost. A lot of the regulations, to me, it does not make sense to say, okay, just because we bring it under one house, there's going to be a better oversight of the housing authorities. I think that it's my belief, and I believe it's the belief of our board, because we passed a resolution that we were against the proposal, is that we know our citizens, we know our community, and we're here to work and be partners with this community and be good neighbors in this community, and that's what we're committed to, and that's what we've done. And I think the fact that we did what a lot of housing authorities have done, we went out for a national search way back when, 6, 7 years ago, to find the best executive director for the housing authority, and we feel we have the best executive housing authority in Linda Shaw. So
And I agree with you. And I
thank
just
you very
listened
much,
to that
Morris.
today. No, no.
So, thank you, Morris. And I do think that, again, it's our opinion on the board that we have regulated so that we are trying. Don't forget, everything's money. A lot of it's money. The state
Everything is
cut
money, George.
well, especially in maintenance of properties, and you have to remember that the state has cut back and the federal government has cut back, so we're being asked to do more with less funds. And what we're trying to do is place those funds in such a fashion that we can pay attention to those problems that are the most necessary. And we've done a number of things. I mean, under the executive director, we've done a oil to gas conversion. Now it's in the Chapter 200 authority, and which will allow much more efficient heating of the buildings, and less of a cost to our tenants because they pay for their own heating. So
We've replaced 85% of the roofs.
So you're using more gas than oil?
We've changed all of that section to gas, and a lot of it was done through both monies from DHCD and the gas company. Am I correct on that? Is it National Grid? No.
National Grid.
National Grid. And because of that, we also won an award for doing that from the state narrow. So the Massachusetts narrow, because it was innovative. And doing things like that is something that, okay, you're local, you can do those things, you can have those things in place. And those are the things we're doing. And we replaced burners that were put in the 50s. So you can imagine any house that has a burner that's still running in the 50s, it's very inefficient. Plus the oil expense has gone.
$3.50 a gallon, I could tell you that.
Okay, so what I'm saying is it's become much more efficient for our families to live in these units. So these are the things we're looking at. I mean, we even go down and see, even the wash machines and dryers that we provide to the tenants to make sure that cost is as low as we can keep it, so that they have the benefit of, we have to recoup our costs, but at the same time as we're trying to make it so that the tenants are able to wash their clothes and keep themselves clean with, the washers and dryers that we provide them.
That's good.
And they're all coin operated.
Before we close, I'd like to do something, if I may.
Okay.
You talked about 60-year-olds. Remember before for housing? There's a woman at the senior center. Her name is Alice Griffin. She is a little over 60.
Okay.
She made a prop for our Revere Veterans and Community Show, and she made this doll, and I want you to get, Linda, would you hold that up so they can get it blow up? Because you're a lot prettier than me. Show them that doll. This was made by Alice Griffin.
That's very pretty.
It's a beautiful doll.
It is.
And she makes dolls for the seniors, so if anybody would like to have a doll made, they come down to the senior center, 25
really?
Winthrop Avenue, see Alice, and tell her what you like, and she'll do it for you. And the
Great.
money goes to help the seniors.
Oh, that's nice.
So
That's nice.
we still got to forget about the time. So I'm going to say, I'm going to give you 2 minutes to wrap up whatever you want to say, George. 2 minutes to you, Linda.
I'll let Linda go first.
Right.
Okay, Linda.
And then we'll close the show.
Okay,
And
Morris.
before we do, I want to thank you both for coming up, because you gave me a good lesson about the Housing Authority.
Okay.
And I'm sure you gave the city of Revere, and this goes on Facebook and YouTube, the rest of the world a good lesson on the
Oh, that's
Housing
great.
Authority.
Okay.
I'd like to just comment on the fact that we're looking at, or we have been looking at, creating a nonprofit that could build more senior housing in the city because it is much needed. One of the places that we've been looking at very closely is the place located at Garfield and Elliott Streets, right next to Garfield School. We currently house 46 elderly residents there, and if we could redo it, modernize it, or start all over again with that building, we could house double the amount of residents there. So it's things like that that we're actively out searching for funding partners to help us do those kinds of things. We've replaced 85% of the roofs on our housing. We have remodeled housing that have been what we call offline for years and put people in them very recently, and will continue to do so. And of course, most people know that we completely remodeled outside the Alfred Liston Towers building, and we're starting to do the inside as well. So we have a lot on our plates.
I can see that.
With the money that we're given, but we're happy to do it.
Right. George, I'd like to ask you, I was going to ask her, but I forgot, so I'm going to ask you. Do you ever get any volunteers, like people that do roofing, plumbing, electrical, masonry, to come in and sort of kind of help out, like President Carter does?
Or your Homes for Humanity?
Right.
You know, we don't, as far as I do know, we
Okay.
don't. But at the same time, is what we've done is, and what we've been able to take advantage of is especially in remodeling some of our 705s, which is a state project. The governor has gone into a funding, different funding. Governor Patrick has gone into a different funding source where he actually bonds each year for the capital needs of the various housing authorities. I mean, in total, if you look across the state, it's hundreds of millions of dollars that these housing authorities, who have housing stocks from the 50s and the 60s, to actually bring them up to a more livable, as I can put it, the best I can put it, is a more livable stage. So, or replace them. So, looking at that, we've been able to take advantage of that, and we've done 705s. And I think Linda was referring to some of the, I believe the people in Revere have seen in the newspaper the renovations that we've done to on Dana Street and Shirley Avenue. And we're very proud to put families in there and young families in there, and we've seen them. And I remember one of them, especially one on Dana Street, there was this a little girl who was there with her mother when I handed the keys, and she was so excited that she was moving into this brand new renovated apartment or unit, and she was so excited, and you can see the excitement, and that's what we're here for. That's what the Revere Housing Authority is here for. Or any housing authority is here for, is to house the needs of children, and house the needs of families, and house the needs of the elderly, and that's what we plan to do. Going along with starting the nonprofit is that, yes, we are looking in the nonprofit. We've actually been looking at it for 4 or 5 years. We have, I do want to say this one thing about the board. Out of all the boards in the state, we have 3 members who are board certified, myself included, as far as the Massachusetts Narrow. And that's one of the things the governor has now proposed in this new bill change, and we've already had that, and we've been that way for a number of years. We're asking our 2 new members to get certified, but they've been only there about a year, and they will also be certified. So we have a board that works very well together, and one that has the highest concern. Going to the, and we still have committed to starting a nonprofit in order to get the renovations of Garfield and Elliott, and we hope that we will make a mixed-use project there for in the near future, and if we can do that, and with the use of certain financing, especially the use of tax credits, low-income tax credits, I believe that we can make that happen. So we're looking to grow this housing authority. We're looking to modernize this housing authority. And again, we're committed to giving a clean, safe, decent housing to the residents of our authority.
One final question that I wanted to ask both of you. a family living in the housing authority, if they destroy anything within, like let's say the walls or,
Yeah.
are they responsible to rectify it?
Yes, they are.
yeah.
So-
we collect a deposit on apartments just like regular
Or
landlords.
security deposit?
A security deposit, and we use the security deposit to make repairs. If the repairs are more than the security deposit we have, we bill them for that and try to collect it.
Okay, and the final question, is there any, how could I put that? Well, can you actually throw out a tenant that's living there if he's causing a lot of problems?
Absolutely.
Absolutely, and we've done it.
Absolutely.
And what would be the, like drunkenness would be one of them?
Whatever.
Drugs, alcohol.
Oh, drugs, smoking?
When we had
Oh, by the way, can you smoke in the apartments?
effective this year in 2014, we're moving to a no smoking policy in the apartments.
All the,
Because we've had a couple of fires where
I was,
people
okay.
Right.
where people have smoked in
One on
bed.
Harris Street, I remember that.
Exactly.
Right, and
Exactly.
that occurred, and when that occurred, the board took action and went to a non-smoking policy because two things happened there. The tenant almost passed on. A fireman was brought to the hospital with pains in his chest, and other tenants surrounding the apartment were also put into danger. So rather than have that happen, and again, being on our safe part of our mission statement, the safe part of our mission statement is that we are now going to move to that there is no smoking on any of the property, even the land of the Revere Housing Authority, so that
That may be a
By the way.
disadvantage to you, you know, because then the people live longer and you won't have enough
that's
outlay
fine. We
for
wish
them.
them to live long, healthy lives. We do. That's what we're there to have them. They live long, happy, and healthy, and safe lives, and that's what we're there for. And we look
Okay.
forward to that.
I want to thank both of you, and
Okay.
I do mean both of you for coming
Thank you,
out.
Morris.
Linda, thank you for coming on
You're
because
very
you
welcome.
explained it not only to the people of Revere, but you explained it to yours truly, and you,
And
George.
Morris, thank you so much.
It was an
Always
honor
a
to
pleasure.
have you.
It's
Thank
an
you.
honor to be
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you, Morris.
And God bless both of you, and God bless our people in the city of Revere, and especially the United States of America. And again, thank you both for coming.
Thank you, Morris.